Okay, let's unpack this. Welcome to the Deep Dive, your shortcut to getting well-informed fast. Today we are diving into the really extraordinary life and the lasting impact of Prophet Muhammad. Our mission here is to give you a nuanced understanding. We're drawing on diverse scholarly views, moving beyond just one single story. We'll look at the challenges, and they are fascinating, of piecing together his life from early sources. Then we'll get into the academic debates, which are crucial, and finally distill those core teachings that really sparked a global transformation. So as we kick this off, what's maybe one key challenge that jumps out straight away?
Well, I think what's really compelling is how these historical puzzles push us to look beyond just the internal Islamic sources themselves. You see, unlike maybe some other historical figures who have lots of contemporary documents, much of what we know about Muhammad comes from texts written down decades, sometimes even centuries, after he lived. Take the Quran, for instance. It's the earliest Muslim source, yes, but it only mentions Muhammad by name, 4 times, and gives very little actual biographical detail.
Right. Very little personal stuff. And then you have the Sirah.
Exactly. The Sirah literature, these are essentially the early biographies. Like Ibn Ishaq's work, they give us these rich, detailed stories. But, and this is the key thing, they were compiled maybe 100, 200 years later. So you immediately have questions, right? About oral traditions, potential changes, maybe embellishments.
And the Hadith, too. Those collected sayings and actions.
Oh, absolutely. Thousands upon thousands of them. They're vital for understanding practice and belief, no question. But just imagine trying to gather and verify eyewitness accounts generations later, authenticating them, figuring out the chain of transmission. It's a huge, huge scholarly effort.
Okay, so given those challenges with the internal sources, how vital do external non-Muslim sources become? Do they fill gaps or maybe even challenge the story?
That's precisely where they become incredibly valuable. These non-Muslim texts from the 7th, 8th centuries, contemporary or near contemporary. Robert Hoyland's work compiling these is, well, foundational. Seeing Islam as others saw it, he gathered over 120 sources: Greek, Syriac, Armenian, Hebrew texts.
Wow, that many.
Yeah. And they sometimes confirm basic details we see elsewhere, but other times they offer different perspectives, maybe different chronologies even. They really broaden the picture beyond just one tradition's viewpoint.
Okay, that makes sense. Understanding these source issues, it leads us straight into those academic debates you mentioned. Can you sort of walk us through the traditionalist versus revisionist schools of thought?
Sure. It really gets to the heart of how history is written, you know, how historians weigh evidence. So you have traditional scholars who, broadly speaking, tend to accept the classical Muslim accounts as fairly reliable, unless there's a strong reason not to. But then, starting really in the 1970s, you get scholars like John Wansbrough, Patricia Crone, Michael Cook, key figures in what's often called the revisionist school.
Okay, and what defines their approach?
They argue for a much more source-critical method, meaning they place a high premium on independent evidence. Things like those early non-Islamic accounts we just talked about, archaeological findings, even old coins, numismatics.
Oh, it's really?
Yeah, because they argue that the traditional Islamic accounts might have evolved, been shaped, maybe even back-projected over time to fit later theological or political needs. So they're sometimes labeled minimalist. They accept little from the traditional narrative unless it's backed up independently, while maximalists are more inclined to accept it unless it's strongly contradicted.
It's about transparency, then, how historians reach conclusions.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It highlights the different ways scholars approach potentially biased historical material.
Right. So, okay, navigating through all that complexity, the sources, the debates, what were the actual core teachings? What was the fundamental message that caused such a massive shift?
At the absolute core, it was Tawheed, the radical, uncompromising oneness of God, Allah. He directly challenged the polytheism that was, well, dominant in pre-Islamic Arabia. His message was clear. Only Allah is worthy of worship. No intermediaries, no other deities. This was revolutionary. It shifted identity away from just tribe or clan towards a unified community, an ummah, based purely on shared faith.
And beyond that core theological idea, what about the practical, the social impact? How did that message change how people live together?
Oh, hugely. Alongside Tawheed was this profound commitment to moral and social reform. Justice, compassion, equality, these were central tenets. He stressed caring for the vulnerable, the poor, orphans, widows, the marginalized. It wasn't just abstract theology. It was about building a just society. In Medina, for example, he established a new social contract, Concepts like zakat, the obligatory charity, were institutionalized to redistribute wealth and reduce inequality.
So it was a whole new blueprint for society, really.
Absolutely. His own leadership was meant to embody these principles of justice and compassion.
Okay, let's try and bring this together as we wrap up this deep dive. What you've gained here is a shortcut to being well-informed about Prophet Muhammad. We've navigated the tricky landscape of historical sources. You understand now why scholars look so carefully at texts written down sometimes centuries after the events they describe.
And you've seen how these different academic viewpoints, traditionalist and revisionist, shape how we understand the past. Different methods, different conclusions sometimes. We also explored that revolutionary core of his message, God's absolute oneness, Tawheed, and that powerful call for a just, fair, egalitarian society.
And we connected that to the bigger historical picture, right? How these ideas helped unify the Arabian Peninsula and how they laid the groundwork for the incredible flourishing of the Islamic Golden Age, giving us intellectual giants like, Al-Khwarizmi in mathematics or Ibn Sina in medicine. Just an indelible mark on civilization.
Yeah, absolutely. And that leaves us, perhaps, with something for you to think about. Consider how the understanding, the portrayal of a figure's prophethood itself can change, can evolve over time. You might see hints of a more, let's say, mortal figure in the very earliest texts, compared to later traditions that really emphasize miracles and supernatural feats. What does that evolution tell us about how religious and historical interpretations are, well, alive? How they adapt and change within communities over centuries?
That's a fascinating question to ponder. There's always more to learn, of course, and we hope this deep dive sparks your own continued exploration.